Hi, and thanks for downloading the second full episode of the Photographer Podcast with myself, Adam Juniper, Tanya-N, and this week we're joined by Joe Carter. I want to call him Joeseth Carter because joesethcarter.com is where you'll find him online. Joe is a gig photographer based in Brighton, which is a city that is either 1 hour or 10 hours from London, depending on Southern Rail's moods. And we'll ask him properly about what he does after we've covered this month's news. So I read that Sony now think that they're going to be number one in cameras by 2021, which is just 3 years away. Does anyone else shoot on Sony? I do.
I don't currently.
I
have plans to.
Do you really?
Have plans to. Yeah, I've tried out a few Sony cameras, and I think they're good.
Yeah. You're currently being recorded on a Sony camera as well as another for the video version of the podcast.
Yes.
The battery of which will run out about 12 minutes in, but we'll get some nice shots of the video.
Yeah.
How do you find sort of working with an electronic viewfinder though? Were you assuming you were working with it?
It's odd at first, but I mean it's not particularly a move to Sony for me, or won't be a move to Sony. It's just adding it to my collection, I suppose. I get asked to do quite a lot of video stuff, and Sony is very good for video. This isn't an advert for Sony, by the way, for anyone who's listening. I'm not paid by the corporation. I just found them quite easy to work with for editing.
But do you really think they'll be number one, whatever number one means, in 2 years' time, 3 years' time?
Well, what does number one refer to? Is that the highest selling, highest profit?
Well, this is it, and I can't see it happening. I see
unit sales, or most money made in photography.
Yeah.
Feel like I should have read this story in more detail. So I knew if there was a specific target.
Sure.
But I guess Sony might do more compacts.
Yeah.
And maybe some people still buy compact cameras.
Is there really a market for compact cameras anymore?
I don't think there is. It's all on the phone, right?
With the level of quality of phone camera you can get now.
I think that's true. But then there are... I know that Sony have... And we did promise this podcast wouldn't get too techie, but they do have 4K compact cameras that produce usable video, which is excessively priced. So maybe if you count that and you count the sort of maybe the advantage they have in selling bodies, because people are going, ooh, exciting new body, whereas if you're a Canon or a Nikon person,
exciting new body. Maybe if they marketed it like that, they'll be number one. Is that that's their plan?
That should be the strategy.
I guess mirrorless cameras are kind of a compact DSLR anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, I think what it's going to do is drum up competition, and there'll be more. Yeah, I think there'll be more competition to try and come out with something even better. Mm-hmm. So that's a good thing.
You're saying that Canon and Nikon might not forget that they also make cameras.
Well, this is it. Yeah, exactly. But I just can't see. I just don't know. Maybe I'm just being really traditional then, thinking, right, from an SLR perspective, would you really move over to Sony? I mean, you're saying you would for video purposes.
Yeah.
But the general I don't know.
They come out with some crazy technology.
Yeah.
And combining that.
Day in, day out, you're being asked to work. I mean, I guess you're asked to produce video as well as...
Yeah, pretty much.
People expect.
And music videos as well. So, and that's kind of high production value. Not just kind of documentary, gig videos, that kind of thing. So if you can get a camera, for £2,000 that can give you that kind of quality, it's a bit of a no-brainer. And for me, I don't feel like there is any other competition to Sony for that kind of price range and the quality you can get.
It's funny, only a few years ago I was picking up a Canon 7D because the argument at the time was this is the only rational priced camera.
Yeah, and how quickly things change.
For exactly that.
Yeah, it's mad.
Well, so are Sony going to make it? Come on, let's yes or no.
I'm going to vote no.
I'll give them a yes.
Contrary to what I just said.
I'm a no. Well, in 3 years' time,
I don't want to
come back in this room and...
Yeah, I'll meet you back here in 3 years and we can see. And whoever
Take
guessed
bets.
correctly can get a Sony camera.
We'll give them a coffee from the machine.
Yeah.
All right. Second on the list, since we're all in London, the Photo London event happened. Now, this isn't a trade show like Photo Plus or the Photo Show in Birmingham, but one in which galleries from around the world come set up the equivalent of a little stall. They tend to get a little room in the very beautiful Somerset house and attempt to sell very expensive prints to collectors, or occasionally punctuated in the crowd, I have to admit, by people who thought they were coming to a photography trade show carrying all of their gear to show, that they've got gear. I don't know if either of you had, well, I think I do know actually that either of you had the chance to go.
I couldn't actually make it.
Me neither.
I was away.
So should we change the subject now?
I think the final bit of news was that a Magnum at Home show launched, which is sponsored by Fujifilm, who have given one of their fancy new cameras, the name escapes me, to 17 Magnum photographers, and they have been sent home to take pictures of their impression of their own home. And the inspiration here was that photographers are very rarely at home, or at least successful photographers. It was very weird to see that they had very, very different views of their own home environment. Brighton-based Magnum photographer Mark Power was taking pictures of, or relating to, the fact his daughter was about to leave for university, and she didn't get to see the pictures until the show opened that day.
Ooh,
so we also got to see her reaction to them.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was. But others went for aerial photos, or there was, dare I say it, one slightly boring picture of a baby's feet in the sort of classic touristy, but really, really mixed.
So it's open to interpretation. So they can essentially take pictures of anything as long as it's at home.
It's their interpretation of home.
Yeah.
Right? So
exactly.
hence the baby's feet. That's when they feel like they're at home and they're with their child, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you do, so with something like that, you have to wonder, does a photographer think about what they think people want to see? Or are they thinking about, right, this is personal, I'm going to treat it like a personal project, because it isn't a personal space. You know, it's interesting. I wonder what goes through their minds there. Because what would you do if you were given that project?
A photo of my home.
Yeah, I mean, just top of your head, would you presumably put quite a bit of thought into it and think, right, what do people want to see? Or would you just be kind of, well...
I mean, so I'm very OCD. So my bedroom is immaculate. Everything has its place. And the bed is made every morning as soon as I get out of bed. So I'd probably just take a photo because I think it would probably make people think that it was like a show home or something, you know. But actually, that is
speaks proudly of his own.
Well, no, just my bedroom is absolutely not a show home standard living arrangement for sure. But I guess that kind of shows a bit of an inkling into my personality.
Perfectionist.
Well, not so much perfectionist, just very OCD.
Just OCD, okay, fair enough. It's a tough one, right?
I mean, being a person who generally photographs with a drone, I'd probably just want to go as high as I legally could and take an aerial shot.
Yeah. Is that in London somewhere that you live?
Yeah, so I'd have to move house first. Because obviously
you
London,
legally now.
Sounds like
or get the permission of a
that'd be a very expensive project for you, right?
This is a very inconvenient thing for you to try and attempt.
That's true. Okay, so that's this month in photography that we're prepared to talk about anyway. So let's get to know Joe. Probably best to start at the beginning.
From the beginning of time.
Well, if you know anything about that, I think there are a lot of scientists who'd be very interested.
There's lots of questions. Opening a can of worms there. Absolutely.
I always like the Douglas Adams line, in the beginning the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and was widely regarded as a bad move.
Very good.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, have you always been in Brighton?
No, so I grew up in a little village which is about 20 miles outside of Brighton, a place called Angmering. I don't know if either of you would have heard of that.
No.
You have? Nodding your head.
I lived in Brighton for Yeah. Full
Okay, so you know the surrounding area. Yeah, so I grew up there, spent my teenage years there, and as soon as I finished college, I fled to Brighton to live the, air quotes, big city life, I suppose.
So you didn't have the Brighton college lifestyle?
I did not. I don't know if I'd still be alive if I had the Brighton college lifestyle.
I saw a lot of it going on when I was
very debauched.
I mean, is it still debauched? You know, now you're a little more grown up.
It can be if you want to go out for a great night out, then Brighton is a perfect place to do that. But it's also got, it can be tranquil at times. You can find peace there pretty easily.
This might be hard to explain if you don't know Brighton, but you're a sort of Hove person about Brighton.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's. I mean, the answer to this question is going to piss a lot of people off, depending on the answer. I would say that I'm neither of those. I have never lived in Hove, always in Brighton. So that's the end of the answer. Thanks.
Fair enough. I always used to have to say Hove actually because it affects your address, but I didn't want to be the Hove end of the town.
Yeah. No, Hove's great. Hove's lovely.
Yeah.
So
it's just a longer walk to Brighton Station, isn't it?
It is, but you've got a Hove station, so they're catering.
A lot of people are being very educated right now. Brighton versus Hove.
And Brighton
is it two different areas? I mean, I'm not familiar. I just think of Brighton, think of the beach.
It's Brighton and Hove.
Brighton and Hove.
But there is this kind of whole, Hove separate Brighton thing.
So technically,
it's
as a city,
it is actually a thing.
It's called Brighton and Hove as a city.
Right. Okay.
Like the council run by the hippies and what have you.
Interesting. Okay.
But there is a line on a map somewhere, and the bit is almost definitely Brighton.
On the Brighton side,
You pour out from the trains on the sunny.
Pretty much, yeah.
But if you turn right and keep walking, it eventually becomes Hove, which is all Georgian.
So it's prettier and it's more refined.
Let's not get into boundaries of where things are in Brighton. I'm sure listeners have got more important things to do.
Are you? Do you? Okay, so did you study photography?
I did not. No, I came to photography very late, actually. I've actually only been a photographer for about 18 months, believe it or not.
Really?
Yes.
So how did it all come about?
So I studied music and played in bands and stuff, and that was kind of my passion from quite a young age, and was heavily involved in the music scene in Brighton and surrounding areas as a teenager. And then through that I started working more in the professional side of music, so driving bands and doing merch for bands, and then eventually tour managing. So I've been a freelance tour manager for a number of years now. And then a couple of years ago I started taking photos just on my phone, just for my pleasure basically. And one of the bands I was touring with would ask me to send the photos, and they, kind of said good things about what I was taking, just using an iPhone. And I thought maybe I've got a bit of an eye for this. And it wasn't until about 6 months later that I found myself in a little bit of a rough spot and needed a hobby to distract myself from things. I just bought a camera on a whim and just fell in love with it immediately, basically. And then spent the next 3 or 4 months going out, taking as many photos as I could, watching YouTube tutorials, reading books, looking at other photographers, how they were taking photos, and just taught myself how to use a camera properly, basically.
That's incredible, because if I look at your work online, you certainly look like you've been established in the concert gig world for many, many years.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting that, and I'm sure that listeners will be interested to know that you can pick this up really quickly and just teach yourself and ultimately do your own thing, right, to get on this path, which is
I think especially in this day and age, you can learn practically anything online. I don't think you need to go and study it particularly to learn. And also I think learning by doing, if you go out and do something, you will gradually get there and kind of figure out, how things work and what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, people spend thousands of pounds on workshops, right? So street photography is my thing, and you get people paying literally kind of £2,000-3,000 for, you know, a day's workshop to just go out and about on the streets and do the kind of thing that.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm self-taught as well, and I think it's perfectly possible. Obviously, it's nice to be guided, but you can teach yourself a lot of this stuff as well. You just have to have the will to do it, really, right? Yeah,
completely.
Yeah.
I have read a lot of books about photography.
Really now?
I don't believe that.
You argue you should be setting up your own workshops.
Well, good point actually. It's a lot of money in it.
My workshop would just involve instructing people how to type in YouTube into their search bar and search
and then go out and do it, right?
What about, I know, you know, obviously there's a lot you can learn from YouTube and from books, but do you think access was important? Like you know, because you'd already worked?
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously, from working in the music industry, taking the photography into the music industry was, you know, it was easy access for me into that world. So I started taking photos of bands that I was touring with, tour managing anyway. Like that kind of allowed me to build up a portfolio of that stuff without doing it professionally, if you know what I mean. So I kind of had that to ride on. And then got picked up by Royal Blood, but they are friends of mine anyway, so it's not, you know, I kind of had an easy ride and got that handed on a plate. Doesn't mean I didn't work hard when I was doing it, but, you know, that was kind of, I got that opportunity. And to be honest with you, the first tour I did with those guys, I was still learning so much about what I wanted to show as a photographer and how to capture those moments. You know, I was on a manual setting at that point by that time, but I still hadn't really found my style. I think it was only at the beginning of this year that I really found kind of what I want to show as a photographer and my style.
But do you not feel it's almost, when you haven't quite found that style, it's quite refreshing from your perspective and from the viewer's perspective, because actually you're just trying everything and anything, right?
Yeah.
So you can kind of afford to try those different things, whereas once you get into a little bubble that, okay, this is my style, that then becomes your thing. So do you actually want to do that, or do you not think that experimenting is just a great way of just keeping it fresh?
Oh yeah, it completely is. But I think if you can look at a photographer's work and see some consistency in it, that's a good thing. And whether that's the consistency of the subject or the consistency of the editing style or whatever, I do like to see that. You know, when you can look at a photo and know who took that, and I'd really like to get to that point. But that's difficult to do in kind of with gig photography, because the light changes all the time. You've got different subjects, you know, so it is a hard thing to do.
And also maybe it's not, you know, that there is a big argument for not necessarily completely, especially, you know, at this point in your career, devoting yourself wholly to one style. I mean, I was looking at Bruce Gilden, who famous he's a street photographer, but he just, you know, over his career has steadily put the camera closer and closer to people's faces, until he just takes those quite horrible looking portraits.
It's very attractive.
You'd definitely be quite upset if you didn't know. You're like, if you knew it was Bruce Gilden, you'd be like, yeah, I've got a Bruce Gilden. If you knew that he was a photographer and then that's what you got, your response would probably be a bit different. But that style's definitely very fixed now. But then he's 70 something, so he can get away with that, right? Yeah. Whereas presumably you want to leave yourself open to.
Yeah, and like I said, it definitely depends on the subject. A certain style is going to work for shooting gigs, and a certain style is going to work for shooting the backstage parts of gigs, and that's not going to translate to shooting a wedding, for example. But I think generally my style now is developed to using like a wide open aperture and basically having very minimal parts of the photo in focus, and that's kind of what I'm rolling with at the moment, I suppose.
From what I've seen, I would say you also process to bring darkness out. Is that fair? Not the best description, is it?
To bring darkness out. What to making the dark.
Certainly contrast.
Yeah,
Contrast without excessive saturation.
That's pretty much it. I quite like my colours muted.
Yeah, I was going to actually say, we were talking about this when we were looking through your Instagram page, for example, and there is already a style that you've developed, which is the colours. There's a nice contrast without it being too contrasty.
Yeah.
So it's got quite a bit of mood to it in a way. It's got this kind of feel,
I guess, moody, I suppose.
It's definitely moody. Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm going for, and what I'm trying to keep consistent now.
And I think that's quite it does feel like how do we describe this decade? Like 2000s, 2010s?
Mental? I don't know particularly.
What do you mean in terms of, like, you had the noughties?
80s, 90s, noughties, teens?
Is it?
It's definitely a late
I don't know,
teens.
what is it? I'm sure someone has defined what it is called.
No, because everyone talks about millennials now.
It's the first thing we do when we're off this.
Just talk about millennials, yeah.
Yeah, why narrow it down to a decade when you can blame an entire generation?
Yeah, absolutely. I fall into the category of millennials, so I think I do anyway.
I think I do as well.
I miss out on every measure of millennial by a year. I am, believe it or not, Generation X, which I'm meant to be much cooler than I am.
It just means you're probably better at social skills, which no,
it definitely doesn't. It means there was a point at which Nirvana, Cobain was alive. Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, not all of Nirvana. I'm pretty sure Dave Grohl was still kicking.
Just going back to the access part of things. So, as we know, gig photography, most photographers that shoot gigs, they have 3 pictures in the pit, then they're out.
Yeah.
In terms of what you were doing and building up that style, you had access backstage, you had access on the stage. Was that at any point intimidating for you? Because you're technically in front of a huge crowd, right? And they can see you. Yeah.
I did think that it would be. There was a point that I thought about it. I mean, like I explained, I come from a background of playing in bands and stuff, so I'm kind of used to that world. But this, you're kind of exposed, I guess. And a point that I thought about it, so when you're taking photos of something and you're completely in that, you don't really think about anything else, and it's a really nice release from the rest of your life because you're just taking photos and you're just thinking about your subject and your composition and that kind of thing. So I would be kind of nervous before a show, especially with the Royal Blood shows because some of them were massive. Be nervous before a show, and then as soon as I stepped on the stage to take photos, I wouldn't be thinking about that. I'd be thinking about the shot and watching Mike and Ben and trying to look for those moments that were going to happen and capture those. So I guess before the actual act of going onto the stage, it feels intimidating, but while you're doing it, you don't really think about it too much. You're just doing your job.
Yeah.
But there was a point in when I was on the UK arena tour, they had like the biggest show to date in Manchester, and like obviously the terrible things that happened in Manchester. It was a really big show, and it meant a lot to a lot of people.
Was this after?
Yeah, it was. It was after that. So it was a really big show, and there was just this kind of strange atmosphere, not bad at all, like this amazing atmosphere and energy. And I was stood at the top of the ego ramp, and Mike was down there playing his bass, and I actually did take myself out of that thinking about what I was doing in a professional sense and actually take in what was going on around me, and it was quite overwhelming to that many people. They weren't looking at me or anything. Maybe a few people were noticing the guy on the stage with a camera, wishing that I wasn't standing there ruining the moment.
Yeah,
probably in a lot of photos.
Well, right?
Yeah.
Have you looked for yourself?
No, I haven't done that. But yeah, generally you kind of just look at it professionally and you go into that little space and you're just doing your job. But yeah, at that moment it was pretty scary. Yeah, kind of intimidating.
Because I find it intriguing, being sort of into the street side of things, you're kind of in the shadows and you're trying to be inconspicuous and all that kind of stuff. in your case, I guess you almost want the band, whoever you're shooting, to look at you, to notice you, so you get some great shots, maybe eye contact or whatever it is. Is that true, or do you just kind of go with the flow? Are you kind of going in with a mindset of, right, today I really want this picture, I really want them to do this? Or did you ever speak to Royal Blood beforehand and say, hey guys, can you just do this for me in the middle of the show?
Absolutely not.
You didn't do that, okay. Can you just pose for me midway?
This is what, before we started recording, this is what I was talking about earlier about kind of geek photography and kind of the fact that I love shooting certain bands, but I don't want it to become a full-time thing where I'm just shooting bands because I need to earn some money. That's never what I've wanted to do with it. With Royal Blood, have you seen them live?
I've seen them once actually a few years ago. They were supporting Foos at Milton Keynes.
Yeah.
They weren't very well known then.
Yeah.
And brilliant
Milton
energy.
Keynes Bowl,
but
right?
It was.
Yeah. I wasn't at the gig,
okay,
no, but I
okay.
remember it happening. But yeah, without turning this podcast into a promotion for Royal Blood, they were extremely.
Who are brilliant, by the way.
Yeah, they are great. They're just really enthralling to watch, and they're just the two of them. The chemistry they have on stage, because they are best mates, is amazing and hilarious. So I've never needed to instruct them to do anything, because the hilarity is already there, and there's enough excitement already happening just to capture those things. And when you're touring with a band, they're playing the same set every night. Generally, there will be things that they do that they would do every night, so you know that thing's going to happen. You can be in the right place at the right time. So it's remembering those cues during the set, I suppose.
They play the same set every night.
They're almost thinking it's just spontaneous.
Sometimes they mix it up, and it would vary from tour to tour, and if they've got new songs or whatever. But yeah, generally there are key points in the show that you want to capture that part. But with other bands, I think I never want to prompt anything, because that's not real. And really, what I want to capture is real moments. It's the organic things that make me excited, really. So I just shoot a hell of a lot of photos, and then try and edit them really quickly. I've actually turned to editing on my phone a lot recently.
What do you use?
VSCO.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of presets that I made in there, which I can they're close enough to the presets that I made in Lightroom, that I'm kind of happy with using that. The only problem is you can't send those to clients, but for stuff for social media, say a band wants to post on social media within an hour of the gig finishing, I can download some photos onto my phone from my camera and then quickly cull those and then edit. So it's a really quick turnaround.
That's an interesting point, isn't it?
Still feels surreal, the ability to do that.
Yeah.
I'm quite old-fashioned like that, so I'll be back on the laptop, plugging in and doing all the stuff in Photoshop or whatever choice of software there. But that's interesting, because you've got to have the timeliness as well, right, of the whole thing.
Yeah, sure. Because nobody really cares about the gig the 2 days afterwards. So you've got to get that stuff out there, and while it's fresh in people's minds.
As well as shooting gigs, you do commercial and even some weddings.
Mm-hmm.
What's the sort of balance for you?
I guess I still work as a tour manager as well. So tour management I probably do 50% of the time, and then photography is the other 50% of the time. And that's a real mix of just whatever comes in, really, because sometimes it's a combination of going on the road, tour managing a band, and I can be driving, tour managing, taking photos and doing video. So that's when things are real hectic.
At the same time,
just to disclose, not at the same time. I'm obviously a very safe driver when I'm driving other people around.
And even when you're just driving yourself around, of course.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So it's a real mix of stuff, but I guess music, I do press shots and that kind of thing, so it's not just concert photography in the music spectrum of things as well. It's press shots and that kind of thing. Just whatever. I'm
going to say, looking through your portfolio, there's a lot of, especially
Royal Blood, who we're talking about, yeah.
Blood, who we talked about only seconds ago. It's there are the shots in the empty swimming pools and that happen. It's not just
the creepiest place on planet Earth.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, it's bizarre.
How do you go? Do you find these places while you're on tour? Is it just luck, or?
Yeah, that was actually in the basement of a venue called the Eagles Rave Club in Milwaukee. That was in the basement, just a swimming pool next to where our dressing rooms were, and opposite the venue is a hotel called the Ambassador Hotel, and Jeffrey Dahmer? I always get confused whether it's Jeffrey or Jerry. Anyway, he was a serial killer, and he used to frequent the Rave Eagles Club, and then he took one of his victims to the Ambassador Hotel, I believe. I did actually, when we arrived at the venue in Milwaukee, I sat there and read his whole Wikipedia page because I was really intrigued, but now I can't even remember his name. I'm 99% sure it's Jeffrey Dahmer. And then that night I was dropping off of the tour and flying home the next day, so they put me up in a hotel, and they put me up in the Ambassador Hotel. And I don't believe in ghosts, so I wasn't creeped out or anything, but it was just pretty cool, and it was a really cool hotel.
That is a good. I wasn't expecting
so
that
Jeffrey
story.
Dahmer, born 1960, died 1994. Milwaukee cannibal, killer of 17 men,
Cannibal as
rape,
well.
murder, and dismemberment.
Yeah, he did some really horrific things to people. I mean, let's not go into it now, but
Might be one for another podcast.
yeah,
Be on different
an entirely
subject.
different way. A true crime,
I'm really
crime
into
podcast.
I'm really
rather
into
than-
true crime. Really into true crime. So I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts. So that's kind of why I looked up the Wikipedia thing. So I was really intrigued, and we were right there, and I was staying in the hotel, so it just all made sense. But yeah, it put me in a really weird mood for the rest of the day after reading all of that stuff. Yeah, really moody. But it's a really cool venue. It's a great venue.
Well, I guess so. So when you're on tour, for example, do these things? So are you doing your own personal stuff at the same time, or do you dedicate yourself to okay, I'm on tour, I'm here to do a job, I'm here to take pictures of the band, or do you venture outside of that and do your own thing as well and just kind of look at? And do you do landscapes at all? Do you just do your own personal stuff, or to mix it up, or is it really just laser focused? Let's just concentrate on the task at hand.
If the band, when I'm with the band, then I'll have the camera and I'll be looking to get those shots of things that are going on. But obviously there's a lot of downtime when you're touring, and there's a lot of travelling time. So you're on a bus for like 12, if you're touring America, there's long drives there. So you're on a tour bus for like 12 hours, driving through the night. You try and get some sleep. And I'd sit on the bus doing edits because that was a good time to do it. But if we arrive in the next state or city or whatever early enough, I will try and have a walk around. And I think it was mentioned about iPhone photography.
Yeah, I was actually about to interrupt and say,
so
is that where you shot your...
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really nice to have like an openly iPhone section of your portfolio in this day and age when that's something people would like to see, and it's inspirational to think, well, I can take pictures this good if
just
only I
with a phone.
try.
I do find that professional photographers, have this kind of elitist attitude towards phones. Well, many of them
they
do.
Won't use them.
I need to shoot with a. Have you
I'm
found
going
the
to
opposite?
disagree. I found like the really good photographers are perfectly happy to consider.
I need
phone.
new photographer friends.
There's a tier of people, So those who understand that the photography is the photography, then there's the gear gang.
Yeah.
They're the people who are uncomfortable about the idea.
But like all of my favourite photos I've taken were all taken the worst cameras. It's weird. Like I said to you earlier, I don't get too uptight about gear because it essentially doesn't really matter. You're capturing a moment. There's always going to be people out there that are better than you at photography, but if they're not there to capture that moment, then it doesn't matter, does it? Because they weren't there. So you're the one that's got the photo, and I try and balance. Like I can look at a photo and love the quality of it, and
it's not necessarily the same thing, is it?
It's not the same thing. They're two separate things. You can see a photo that is just an incredible moment that touches you, or you can see a photo that is composed really well and it's amazingly edited, and they're two separate things for me. And my favourite photos I take are always, they seem to be, I don't know why, but they're always with, I've got like this Canon PowerShot film camera, and it takes horrible photos. I'm pretty sure it's broken. It doesn't really work properly. But there's just something about it that just takes these photos and it gives them this real mood. And yeah, a few of my favourite photos are taken with that, and a few are taken with an iPhone, just because I saw this thing happening and took my phone out of my pocket and managed to catch it in time. And that's...
Well, yeah, you don't always have
for me, really.
anything else anyway.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know if I answered your question. I've
No,
completely gone off track there.
No, well, I think it was probably a better answer than the question.
It's very kind.
Than the question allowed.
No, but it is great to see kind of someone so open about using phones as well as a medium, a real quality medium to capture moods as well.
Yeah.
Because obviously, the majority of people do have or use their phone cameras and don't have SLRs. And the point that I think you're making is that you don't actually need all that gear to come up with great pictures, and it's not actually about the quality necessarily, but the subject and the whole mood of the scene and all the rest of it,
absolutely.
Which you can quite frankly capture with anything. So.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like sectors of photography where you do need that. It is all about the quality, like I don't know, like a estate agency, like real estate photography, for example. That is all about the quality. You're not going to particularly capture a mood of a bathroom, unless it has some really nice light coming through the window or whatever. So there's definitely a need for
harking back to last time, isn't it? When we were talking about getting the right light. One of our previous guests' main areas was exactly
real
that.
Estate photography.
Real estate and getting the light from inside and out.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing obviously does require technology.
Yeah.
I was going to say, though, one thing that I read on your site, your quote is, clicking with people is more important than clicking the shutter. So do you find it easy to get on with people?
Majority of people, I suppose. Yeah.
He's looking quite hard at me as he says that. Not you, other people are fine.
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be people out there you don't get on with, but in the music industry, everyone's generally in it for the same reason. And I click with people fairly quickly, I think. I don't know, I think especially portraits, if you want to take portraits of people, I think you need to have some level of like personability to be able to get someone to be their true self in front of you, so they're not guarded, So I guess I'm a fairly relaxed person. I don't think I make people feel uncomfortable.
Well,
you can be the judge of that. You can always talk about that after I've left if you want.
You don't have any advice. I suppose the question is really leading to: do you have advice for people?
Do I have advice
for breaking down those barriers?
It's a difficult one because everybody's different, and I guess it's just experience with people. I meet so many people from the work I do that and I think confidence in yourself, if you're confident in who you are, that's going to come across to people, and that's going to make people feel more relaxed. If you're kind of shy, generally people will be a reflection of how you are if it's just one-on-one. So if you're confident in yourself and you're nice to people and you can make people laugh and maybe tell some stupid jokes, that usually helps relax people a little bit. So
basically, you have to be an amazing person. It sounds like to be able to do all this.
This is what I was going to say. It's like you're kind of asking me to like big myself up to explain this.
No, I don't know. Some people have like little methods they use. You're just saying that I have found this is something I can do. So
I know there's definitely like methods that you can use, but
they might be a bit artificial.
I'd rather not disclose what they are, because then. If
someone
does, then it won't work, and it's not like they're, crazy psychological methods or anything.
Like so with street photography, I find that smiling breaks down barriers.
Yeah.
So if you've got a situation where you've just taken a picture of someone, they've just realised you've done that, you're thinking, oh, this could become a situation.
Yeah.
Just smile.
If you look intimidated by that, they're gonna react to that.
Exactly.
Absolutely. But if you just smile or laugh or whatever, it's gonna
hopefully diffuse the situation.
And you probably need to.
You hope it would anyway.
Exactly,
yeah.
I mean, there are other options, of course, which is to try landscape.
Or run.
Yeah.
Okay, can you think of any more lines of interrogation for our guests?
No, I mean, I think it's been really insightful to know kind of how it all started out for you. I think particularly with the whole, you've been doing this for 18 months, that I think is something that, but no, it's great to know that you can go from never having really taken photos or thought about them to where you are now, which is obviously coming out with these great results. So, and that's just a testament of taking as many pictures as possible, like you said. So I think that's a great takeaway, I think, for anyone listening trying to get into photography, or thinking, I'm going to need years of training, or I need a degree in this, or whatever it might be.
You were able to add photography into what you were doing.
Yeah, it was very much adding, for sure. And I think I definitely needed it at that point in my life, and I think that's probably why I accelerated it so quickly. That's how I kind of pushed it on, because I was concentrating a lot of my energy into that, because I didn't have, after I kind of gave up playing in bands and stuff, my creativity had a bit of a void. So I then brought photography in, and that filled that void for me, and I kind of put my everything into it because it was giving me that escape that I really needed at that point.
So now we're gonna ignore the advice, I think, of our listeners, and try once again with the audio discussion of a visual subject. So we're going to pick one of your photos from your Instagram feed. Can you tell me what your Instagram is?
Yes. My Instagram is Joeseth.Carter, Joeseth.Carter. That's where you can find me.
Cool. And do you have a particular favourite that we can scroll back to?
One of my favourite recent ones is this one on the left. Okay, so this is the singer of a band called House, who are really, really great. You should check them out if you haven't heard them already. And this was a couple of weeks ago in Brighton. We just wandered around Brighton and took some photos. But I took this shot and I showed it to my mum the day after I took it. And I was like, what do you think is happening in this photo here? And she said, it looks like he's crying. And then I asked somebody else and they said that it looks like he's laughing.
That's what I would have said.
And that's what I really loved about it. Is you can't. It's open to interpretation what's happening there, and also I think the colours in it are really quite nice as well. And also that Burberry jacket, the Burberry trench coat that he's wearing is absolutely outrageous. Yeah.
So
he pulls it off.
It's cropped quite tightly on the face, obscured by the hand.
It is.
So it could be a Burberry shirt, or it could be
a full-length trench coat. It's Burberry. It's very bold.
You know he's got balls to be wearing.
Absolutely, but he pulls it off. Great swag. So that's one of my recent favourites.
And was that purely spontaneous?
What he's doing in the photo is spontaneous, but I was taking portraits of him, so I was basically shooting continuously for about 30 seconds. Well, not continuously 30 seconds because my camera can't do that, but I was, for 30 seconds I was taking photos and doing as much burst as I could.
How many frames do you end up with after 30 seconds?
I've got quite fast cards in there, so I can usually get about 20 photos. Having a scroll.
I was very impressed with. Is this a GIF or?
It's a GIF.
That you're on your About You page.
Yeah. You have no idea how long that took me to get right. Yeah.
It's well worth a look. And it's is that you?
It is me.
Yeah. It's Joe coming straight at you in black and white, holding a Polaroid, and go on. It was more work than. Because it looks effortless.
So it's a GIF that's like 3 seconds long that just repeats on a loop, but it took me about 2 hours to do. Mainly because the light in my bedroom is quite terrible. And then I had a load of issues trying to set up. So I was the only person there, it was me doing it. So I had to set up an interval timer on my camera and then set it up into burst mode, which if you've ever used a Nikon camera to do that, they don't make it easy for you. It's very confusing. And also it's continuously focusing as well, but the contrast on that Polaroid camera isn't particularly great. So it was looking for a certain point on that camera, but then it just wouldn't focus on it. So it was really frustrating.
What I love about this is the kind of stuff you never read about on Instagram, right? It's always flawless.
Yeah.
And the descriptions are flawless, and then you hear the story and you think, so there are humans that
suffer
spend
for your art,
5 hours to get this right, or
Sure.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
which is nice
Which is
to know.
really, really reassuring that
Yeah.
people have had to put some work into it. or have people for that, I guess.
Yeah.
No, it's great. It is great.
And actually, on that note, before we get locked in the building for the weekend, maybe we should call it quits.
Sure. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's great to have you on here and gain some insights into the world of gig photography and more. So thanks very much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I guess the trick we've all learned is to be a tour manager.
Yeah. Give up photography for a bit and go into tour management.
Does sound fun.
Don't do that.
Doesn't
It does sound fun.
it? Yeah.
Definitely sounds more fun than a day job, doesn't it? So, new career perhaps.
Don't give up on us. And please subscribe and please tell your friends, and we will talk to you again soon. But we're trying to stick to monthly interviews. And just to reiterate, you can find Joe online at
Joeseth.Carter is my Instagram, and joesethcarter.com is my website.
Out of interest, like, where does work come from mostly?
Instagram.
Really?
Instagram's been amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
I am generally going to be found at ILExpress, which is ilexinstant, all one together, .com. And
Yeah, so I've started using Instagram for the last few months, which is interesting. And yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Tanya-N Photography. So check that out. Also Twitter, Tanya_N.
And which is your favourite media?
I'm still working it out, believe it or not. I'm still working it out. So most of my stuff has come from Flickr, believe it or not, which I never plug. And yet that's where I find most people find my stuff.
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't even know what my username is on it. I think it's city_poet.
Really?
Which is completely random. Because
otherwise
you're generally a Tanya_N.
Well, this is it.
Or
So this is going way back before I even had a website.
Maybe you should take the hint and start going by city_poet.
Yeah, maybe that would.
Okay. Well, let's
would
commission a poem for next time.
Yeah, I think that was taken on Insta, which is why I have to go for my name. But anyway, yeah, I haven't quite figured it out. I think
took
that's
your own name.
City Poet.
Oh, City
on
Poet.
Insta. Yeah, unfortunately, but I think it's an interesting subject, right? What's the best medium to?
Bebo,
MySpace. Let's go back to MySpace.
That was another interesting conversation.
I tried to find my MySpace profile recently, but I couldn't. But I found a load of my friends just by typing in their name onto myspace.com. You can
Yeah,
they
still
haven't got rid of profiles.
I found
It's
my
amazing.
profile the other day as well.
Go and have a go at it. It's great. You can find your mates and you can see their pages with.
And the webcam
So
selfies,
good.
the really kind of old school
Oh
selfies.
yeah,
Yeah.
Sort of
the
emo,
selfie angles.
The emo kind of
Mm.
hair halfway across
And you
your
go on their
face,
page
kind
and
of
it
moody.
instantly plays a song by My Chemical Romance. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah. Oh, the times really have moved on, haven't
Yeah.
they? All right, I'm going to turn all the gear off now.
Okay.